Every time I post a life hacking vlog, a lot of you guys ask me the same questions. Hey, how is it possible that they find all these bugs? How is it that they pay $2 million in a span of a couple of days? And what are you guys finding? How does it all work? Well, we got to break this down into a couple of different sections. But first, we got to talk about the fact that these events don't just happen in a span of 2 to 3 days. There's actually 2 weeks of hacking that happens before everyone gets together on site. So HackerOne does a kickoff call. They give us the scope. Hacking starts almost immediately. During those 2 weeks, there's a due period where the bounties get split, and then we go on site. There is a little bit of a window for everyone to travel into the city, and then we get all together on site and then hack on these programs. So let's just make that clear that those $2-3 million don't just happen in those couple of days, but the bounties do get paid during those days of the events that we are on site. So that's out of the way. We talked about it, but I kind of want to also talk about like, how is it that we can go to a live hacking event and maybe hack on a program that has had a bug bounty program for a while and they still manage to pay $2-4 million. How does that work? Also, what is the motivation? Is it just bounty motivated, or is there some sort of an auto motivation or some sort of a pressure that's put on these hackers that they perform very well? And by pressure, I don't mean that someone's putting a gun to their head or they're threatening them like, hey, you have to hack. But there is some pressure when it comes down to hacking, especially if you're an overachiever and you also are competing at this high level of millions of dollars being on the table and also competing against some of the top talent in the world. And to make this video more fun, I got both Justin and Douglas because they have both won different events, and I got both of them on a call and asked them a series of questions, starting with Douglas because he was the most recent MVH out of the two and he just won the first event of the year in 2024. So let me ask you this: how is it that I can go and hack on the public program right before H172 launches, not knowing that TikTok was going to be the target, and I hack on the same exact application that I hacked on during the event? I found 0 bugs, right? This was like 2 to 3 months before the event started. And then 702 happens. I go in, I found a ton of bugs, and I found 2 crits that pretty much landed me the MVH for that event, right? With Andre and Alex. But how's it that I can't find that? Is it that I'm motivated because the bounty amounts are higher, or is it that we thought originally there's going to be some exclusive scope that is going to happen during the event, maybe the day of the event? What do you think that is?
So there is something to there being new scope. It is common for programs to like open up some like beta feature or add something in scope that hasn't been in scope. But I think the biggest part of it is that with these higher payouts and bonuses and prestige, people are just locked in longer than they would be on the public program. Like there's a reason to keep hacking and to push past that initial 20 hours of fatigue. For example, to use Epic Games at 702 as an example, I didn't find anything for several days. I didn't really pick up momentum until about a week and a half in, and that's kind of when my bugs started to rain, and then I just kind of got on a path and just kind of went down it until the end of the event. Whereas if that were to happen regularly outside of a live event, I would have been like, it's been a week, haven't found much, I'm probably just going to switch gears, and that ends up shooting me in the foot, because if I just would have kept my nose down longer, I would have found bugs. But in a live event, you kind of have to keep your nose down longer, and you have to focus on the same scope for a couple weeks before you find anything.
Which one is it? The bounty? Is it the scope? A combination of both of them?
It's a combination. People are more motivated to stay in them longer because of the higher bounties and because of the bonuses. But also, it's common to have new scope introduced at these live hacking events.
Yeah, I think there's something to say about the payouts and also the possibility of getting a kind of a brand new scope that you have never seen, which hasn't been the case with the last event at least. But let me ask you this: I know you do this full time and you do bug hunting full time now as your job. Are live hacking events any different, or is the live hacking event just a part of the job and it's just another day in the office?
Yep, it's part of the job. And so I kind of stopped looking at the leaderboard these last few events. I'm the type of person to get kind of discouraged when I look at a leaderboard and I see that I'm not at the top. And I'm just like, okay, pretend this isn't a live hacking event. Pretend I'm just focusing on this program. Let's just put in my hours, wake up, start hacking at 8, hack for a few hours, go get lunch, hack for 3 more hours, and then take a break around 4 or 5, and then stop for the day. Put in regular working hours on that target, and that's my job. Over the course of, the 3 weeks, you'll have put in over 100 hours, just, working 40 hours a week.
Yeah, I mean, I think 40 hours is a lot of time though, right? How do you grind out that many hours, man? I think I just spent 40 hours this weekend hacking on one of these targets, and honestly, man, it's a grind. How do you stay motivated and how do you keep going?
I think what helps is that with these live hacking event targets, they're almost always repeat customers. And so, I might put in like 100 hours and only find, a couple of bugs on this target, but I know for a fact that this target is going to be around next year and it's going to be another live hacking event. And so really any time and effort I put into learning a program or learning a scope for these live hacking events that have repeat customers is time well invested, because that's going to be useful at the future events. This event on Amazon might not be great for me, but I'll have 100 hours into Amazon by the time the next event comes around. I should do better on the subsequent event.
I think Douglas just nailed it by explaining that he is just doing this from a perspective of, this is another day in a life for me. I am just hacking like there's anything else. I'm not going to put that added pressure on myself of, hey, there's a leaderboard, I have to perform well and I have to kind of rank up. I'm just going to ignore all of that and just focus on hacking and then just look at the outputs at the end. I also asked him like, hey, does pattern recognition work the same way it does with like normal bug bounty programs here, or are you just purely building up momentum and just living off that high of finding vulnerabilities? And I don't think anybody, including myself, could have answered that better.
So beyond just motivation, I think what I found to be pretty universally true in bug bounty is that if I find a single bug in a piece of an application, then there are nearly always going to be more bugs there. And so it's just about finding that first bug, that little feature, that niche feature that they're not doing authorization checks, or that niche feature where they're not really sanitizing HTML. And then it's like, okay, now there's one bug there. That means that one, other hackers haven't touched this area before, so there's probably not going to be dupes. There's not going to be bugs that have been fixed. And it's very likely that the same developer that coded, this one bug also did more work around that feature in that product, and there's going to be other bugs there. Just finding that one bug is sure, it's motivating and it'll kind of keep you hooked and wanting to find more bugs. You'll also, as long as you kind of stay in that same realm of the application that you're hacking, you're more likely to find other bugs there, just because that feature was likely written by the same team.
That was just Douglas's take on this whole bug bounty hunting and live hacking events, and I think that works. I think a lot of times it isn't much different than doing bug bounty hunting, especially if you have a framework that works for you, especially looking at what Douglas explained. It looks like he has a framework that works for bug bounty hunting. He is applying that to live hacking events with the same mentality while relying on just the same skills like pattern recognition, and just keeping in mind that the ROI and the return of investment of his time is there because the boundaries are a lot higher, and we're also getting flown out to his exotic place. That could be motivational when it comes down to hacking at a live hacking event. But then I sat down with Justin. I wanted to kind of understand what his approach is, being the two-time MVH that he is. I wanted to kind of talk to him about what is his approach to it, especially someone that is super motivated to find niche vulnerabilities, as he calls it, or finding niche areas. I kind of want to understand his perspective. Why is that he is also successful at these events, but also how do you prepare for it? That's one thing that I didn't get to ask Douglas was, hey, what do you do to prepare for these live hacking events? Do you have a ritual? Do you have some sort of a routine maybe? What do you do to prep for these events? And Justin had a really good way to put it. And I think his framework is very, very useful. And I think something that I'm going to start doing in the future with live hacking events, because honestly, when an event kicks off, I cannot do anything. I can't focus on anything else. I can't do my day-to-day task. I can't do my morning routine. I just want to get up, hack until I go to bed, and it's just really, really, really hard to just manage everything. So this is what he said to me.
You got to get your meals prepped. You got to get your girlfriend taken on multiple dates. You got to get her feeling 10 out of 10 loved. You got to spend time with your kids. You got to get your house clean, your desk organized, get your calendar cleared, and then lock in. And to be honest, man, that anticipation piece, that prep piece that's become a part of my ritual over the years is one of the things I love the most about all of it too. Your life gets divided into these segments of, all right, live hacking event starts here. This is the live hacking event prep time. And then there's just this momentous occasion of, all right, boom, game time. Let's go. Let's hack.
I don't know about you, dude, but going through these events, it's a lot of pressure. Do you feel the same pressure going in, or is it that you have done so many of these that you're numb to it now?
There's pressure from H1, there's pressure from your peers, there's pressure from yourself. There's all sorts of pressure. And in this scenario, I think it's good pressure. I think it's motivating pressure. And so I think that's where a lot of the motivation comes from. But I'll tell you what, dude, whenever I see the show and tells, it just blows my mind. And it's so motivating because you see these bugs that other people are finding. And you remind yourself, like, even though I'm, competing at the world tier here, there are people out there that are just like running circles around me in some of this stuff, right?
Yeah, I agree. That's good pressure. And I don't think HackerOne's putting this pressure on us on purpose. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business and we want to perform good and go to these live hacking events more, right? We want to get invited to them. What is that quote? It's like, diamonds are created under pressure, right? Pressure is a good thing. And if you look at pressure to draw motivation out of it, yeah, absolutely, I agree. I want to understand kind of like, what what is the motivation behind you spending, hundreds of hours and having just this limited amount of time to hack on a bug bounty program for this event, between the kickoff call to the dupe window being closed and then us getting on site at the event? There's a limited window. What are you doing at this point? What is the goal? What are you doing to, perform at the highest level as you can?
I need to become the world expert on this application. I need to know everything about this application, not just, the main features and the stuff that I can see in the UI. I need to know every single little configuration niche that I can possibly have and be able to talk with the devs and the engineers at an extremely high level about the functionality of it. And I think that's where you find those deeper bugs, right?
What happens when you don't find any bugs? What happens that you've grinded out hundreds of hours and you've either not found anything or you have found some stuff that you thought was a critical or high, but turns out to the customer it doesn't mean the same thing. Everyone's having a bad game. I get that. How do you get out of it?
Sometimes you've got to pivot. Like I have very rarely gotten to this point. There are some points where I will scrap the target that I'm working on and move to a different target, because I know at the end of the day, if I spend 40 hours on an application, I'm pretty much always going to find something. So if spending like 40 hours on something, I'm not finding anything, then I think this is the application's fault, and I need to maybe pick a different piece of scope. And I just got unlucky with the luck of the draw, because for me, I always pick one narrow piece of the scope for these events and I just drill the heck out of it.
I think Justin's advice to pivot and look at a different approach or look at a different application is pure gold, because a lot of times, especially with live hacking events, a lot of the hackers, including myself, don't really know when to move off from a target or move off from a rabbit hole that we have been going down for hours or even some days. So that's, I think, a really, really good way to think about it. If you're not finding vulnerabilities after X amount of hours, I think Justin said 30, 40 hours is a good place for him to stop. And it is maybe time to move on and look at something else. So going back to my original question of how does it happen? What do we do that makes us so motivated during these live hacking events? I think it's a combination. It's a combination of a bunch of different things. I think the bounty amounts are really a big part of the events, and I think personally that's something that motivates me a lot of times, is knowing that if I find a critical finding, this bounty is probably going to get somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000 in a lot of cases. And then that also plays into the wanting to spend and grind down a bunch of hours. And also the dupe split is a huge thing, because as I mentioned earlier, there is a dupe window between these programs that if you find the same critical vulnerability between two other hackers, that bounty gets between all reports. So if me, Justin, and Douglas find the same exact vulnerability and the bounty is 30,000, then we split that three ways, each of us taking home 10,000, which is great, because now there is no more fear of, hey, if I spend all this time and find a vulnerability, what if I get a dupe? But it is also really cool to hear their perspective on how they stay motivated throughout the 10 days of hacking, and what do you do if you don't find any vulnerabilities? So I really appreciate them giving me the time to do this, and I hopefully kind of answered all your questions or even just got you motivated to want to go to the next live hacking event. All right, that's it for me. Do me a favor, if you haven't already though, before I say goodbye, do all the liking, do all the commenting, and make sure, if you haven't already, become a Nahomie and hit that subscribe button. If you want to support the channel a little bit more, you can also become a subscriber, which is $5 a month. So go into the channel and hit that sub button and support the channel as well. All right, that's it. I will see you all in the next video. Peace.